we're just looking at the coverage of their outage. It's way down to in the beta.
Alright.
Cleveland. Yeah. Yeah, 73 customers, 14 hours.
You two ready?
Yes.
Ready to go.
All right. Call meeting to order. Pledge allegiance, Councilmember Richardson.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Powell,
Here.
Councilmember Bryan,
Here.
Councilmember Kraft,
Here.
Councilmember McCallum,
Here.
Councilmember Goff, Councilmember Lawson,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
We have a quorum. Personal appearances, none. Unfinished business. Motion approving the final reading of Bill 2023-74.
An ordinance calling an election on a use tax question in the city of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor, we're going to have Mike Eakey, who's with us via Zoom, talk a little bit about the campaign that has been prepared for this item. So for your all's consideration when you decide to move forward with putting this on the ballot.
There he is. All right. Go ahead, Mike, if you can hear me.
Yes. As I say, hopefully everyone can hear me, and I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person. What was handed out just before the meeting is a draft version of kind of the high-level talking points and flyer. Our goal, as the council had requested at the last meeting, was to have the postcard marketing materials. The challenge was, we know as the conversation has been ongoing, we wanted to make sure we captured the high level, kind of the priority talking points as part of that communication piece. And as we've been working with the designers, their challenge was they weren't able to get everything kind of as concise, so they wanted to make sure we were on the right track before they could get it as concise and small as a postcard. And so hopefully you've had a chance here in the next few minutes to review the flyer, some of the talking points and the creative pieces that have been put together. I'm happy to answer any questions, but this was, like I said, our first draft at taking some of the discussion that we've had here at council, but also some of the discussion that we had heard from the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Downtown Main Street group in trying to capture some of their talking points from the last time they were in front of council.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councilman.
Last night I had a Ward 4 meeting, and we discussed, and people were there, we discussed the use tax, and the thing that seemed to raise the most interest was the idea that businesses who are buying supplies outside of the state aren't paying any taxes, and then when it comes here. So by having the use tax, we're actually capturing that, and I don't know if that's something that needs to be put out more.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I know there was discussion during the first reading of this item about the possibility of amending the language to essentially put the ballot language to actually say 50% of this is going toward water rate relief, and the other 50% is going toward sidewalk infrastructure, and along those lines, our city attorney has proposed language, if you so choose to utilize it, to go ahead and amend that.
All right. So,
A couple quick questions. Are we still going with the proposal that the water rate reduction will be done via a rebate?
I believe so. This allows us to essentially, if the water rates that come to us raise over the course of time, we can still take those into account, if that makes any sense.
And then, do we have any data on the percentage of Missouri cities that have passed use tax? It increases every election, and I think that's important information for residents to know that this is kind of, a change broadly.
I believe it was about 280 or so have approved this throughout the state, and there's about 380 or so that have not yet. Now that includes every single city in the state, so a lot of cities aren't going to mess with it or worry about it if they're smaller size cities. Most of the larger cities have gone forward with something like this. The kind of the main holdouts when it comes to cities of any consequential size are kind of our area right here. Us and Raymore and Blue Springs, I believe, are the three main holdouts.
anybody else? Any questions? All right, so, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I've been waiting to see what you're doing.
I was gonna have someone make a motion to amend.
Would you like me to read the language?
Read it first, yeah.
Prior
read it,
to,
yeah.
okay. So based on kind of the discussions that occurred at the last council meeting, staff kind of circulated some proposed language. So this would be what we think would get to the closest of what you all talked about. But the amended ballot language would be, shall the city of Belton, Missouri, in an effort to level the playing field for local businesses and to provide a source of funds to be split and appropriated equally towards, or to giving rebates for local water utility customers and sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure growth, improvement, and maintenance, impose a local city use tax at the same rate as the total local city sales tax rate, provided that if the local sales tax rate is reduced or raised by voter approval, the local use tax shall be reduced or raised by the same action. So that's kind of the proposed language. The major change in there is the addition of to be split and appropriated equally. That gets us to our 50-50, and it would bind the future councils, subject to them taking it back to the voters to ask them to amend it, to appropriate the funds generated by the use tax in between those two sorts of improvements. And then additionally, it was changed from sidewalk infrastructure to sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure, so that there could be some additional uses, trails, some of those additional pedestrian infrastructure, crosswalks, stuff like that, could also be something that the funds could be utilized to construct and maintain.
Specifically, the trail language allows us to incorporate, parks into this, and so it's not just a use for public works.
Thoughts? Go ahead.
Is it possible, given the language that you just went through, for a future city council to use it for water infrastructure? So we got something we want to repair or, do with our water, can we use the money for that?
So if you look at the way the language is stated, specifically the water kind of rebate program, the to giving rebates language, essentially the definition, and I had to look it up, but the definition of the transitive verb rebate is to reduce the force or activity of. So essentially what the council would be able to utilize these additional use tax funds is to make it so that the debt or the load on the customer is not as high for the things that you've talked about. So you could appropriate the money towards that sort of infrastructure and not have it be borne by the customer as would typically occur, because it would still be reducing the force or activity of the bills on those individuals. Because if you think about it right now, you do have a capital improvement sales tax, which can be utilized for water infrastructure. But typically, all water infrastructure is funded solely by the fees charged to the utility customers, right? So if you want to go through a process of large-scale growth or maintenance, the only way that's typically paid for in cities is through increasing water rates. Future councils could utilize this tax to fund that so that they don't have to increase any water rates for customers at that time.
So just to be clear, the only use would be you'd have to be able to prove and what you're doing is lowering or keeping the same or lowering the rate for the customer.
All appropriations would have to be shown to reduce the force or activity of the water bills on the customers.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, the reason we like the rebate language so much is because this, if you look at your water bill, we have to spell out what we do, right? We have to spell out, here's your rate, here's how much we charge for it, here are the specific fees that have been approved for one reason or another. And so, that's going to be there for regardless. And then you put the rebate on there as well, and then you can literally see how that's affecting the water bill compared to what it is currently. And so if this were to get passed by the voters, once it gets enacted, the voters will see that right away on their water bill.
I feel like I just want to clarify. I was asking that question to make sure that there wasn't a loophole or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I was asking that question, not because I'm suggesting we do that.
Right.
I'm suggesting what you are saying, which is that we have a rebate that is very physical and easy to see, because then the customers will obviously reap the benefit there.
And it behooves us to do what we say we're going to do. It behooves us to say that this is the way we're going to present it, this is the way it's going to work, and for us to follow through on that. Otherwise, then we're not doing what the residents are intending for us to do.
And additionally, and I just wanted to jump back in here, but one of the things to always consider with the city of Belton and the city of Belton's water rates is that the city is essentially at this point beholden to Kansas City, because the city buys all of its water wholesale from the city. So this council, future councils could, instead of having to pass on that increase that comes from Kansas City every year to the customers, which is always a pretty tough pill to swallow when another political subdivision is essentially telling you what you have to charge your own customers, that instead this local use tax could be utilized to make it so that that cost didn't have to be passed on to the customer.
Go ahead.
I know in the past times we've done this, most people that are against this feel like this is a new tax, that it's added on, and it's not a new tax. This is a tax that you're not getting charged if you buy it over the internet right now. And I think that's the biggest thing I think we got to push is people got to understand that this is not new. This is not added on. This is the same thing you're paying local that you're not paying online right now. So that's my biggest thing is that's the most things people have complained about is they think it's a new tax.
So I would, again, I have to jump in here, but so 2 years ago, the city will not be able to make that argument. 2 years ago, the use tax statute was amended to specifically say that cities could not promote or otherwise say that it is not a new tax. So the city will not be saying that.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Who will decide whether this funds goes to certain sidewalks or a park?
That is going to be up to appropriation through the budgeting process, and any major projects, as they normally would come to council for approval.
I'm somewhat struggling with adding trails in versus when we started talking about this, it was about, because we have so much need for sidewalks.
Well, and I think that we should always utilize it for sidewalks as much as we can. It just gives the option in case we decide to do some trails down the line.
I mean, ultimately, it's going to come back to this body for
Correct.
a decision on where the money is spent.
Say that again.
Ultimately, it's going to come back to this body for where that money will be spent each year.
I know we don't. I know we don't have a. I know we don't have an approved budget yet, but in the budget we had last year, or we're operating on now, we have about, I forget, but it's several $1 million in reserves in the water fund. One reason is we're not pushing as much overhead allocation to other people, but which I appreciate. But I was saying all that, but to say that if this passes, I think the best thing you can do to show that we're not disingenuous is to give a direct rebate to the people, regardless of what's going on. Because as I heard from Mr. Warren, that money that is in the reserves of the water fund is for an increase. Now, maybe an increase will be even bigger and override that, but several $1 million, it seems, again, I think the public would appreciate, regardless of what KC is doing, to get at least one rebate on their water bill to show that we're that we're standing behind what we're saying here.
Yeah, to your point, Councilmember Powell, yes, we actually, essentially the city during the budget for FY24, which is what we are operating under now, we did not pass forward a rate increase to the residents, and we did have a rate increase at the wholesale level, and we utilized that the reserve you're talking about to essentially eat that and not pass that on to the customers.
Okay.
And so the reserves that we have or have had, they are not as strong as they were because we are utilizing them specifically to help mitigate the impact of the raising rates to us and not passing those on to the customers for this fiscal year.
Right.
And so that's obviously not a sustainable model long term because that reserve's not going to last forever.
No, but it, hopefully it'll last for at least a few months so we can refund some money and people will see that
Absolutely.
this is standing on its own.
Yes.
Anybody else? You two have anything?
If there's no more comments or questions, I make a motion to amend and add the language from our
City attorney.
yeah, what the attorney said.
Councilmember Prine, if I could, was your motion to amend Bill 2023, Section 1 of Bill number 2023-74 for the ballot language to read as follows? Shall the city of Belton, Missouri, in an effort to level the playing field for local businesses and provide a source of funds to be split and appropriated equally to giving rebates for local water utility customers and sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure growth, improvement, and maintenance, impose a local city use tax at the same rate as the total local city sales tax, provided that if the local sales tax rate is reduced or raised by voter approval, the local use tax rate shall be reduced or raised by the same action? Was that your motion?
That is exactly what I meant.
All right, so we have a motion to amend the motion on the floor,
So I'll second.
and we have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So now we have a motion, amended motion on the floor. Any more discussion? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I want to reiterate to the public, we mentioned this last meeting, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands this, that this water rebate, if given current estimates for 2023, would amount to at least $144 per user. That's resident and business for the year, and it would take many thousands of dollars of online spending to mitigate that if you're the end user. So I'm not saying there aren't people out there that do that, but this will be a net gain for most residents.
Just to clarify, not user, but customer.
Customer.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Anything else on the motion as amended? You two have anything? All right.
Nope, I'm good.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Prine,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
McCallum,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes,
Richardson.
Aye.
motion passes. F, hold on a minute. New business, number one, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2024-01.
An ordinance approving a rezoning to C2 General Commercial for property located at the southwest corner of East North Avenue, 58 Highway, and Interstate 49.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. You're up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before this evening is a request for a rezoning of property at the southwest corner of 58 Highway and I-49. The subject property currently does not have a zoning designation as it was previously MoDOT right-of-way. This property was deeded over to the city and was annexed on December 12th, 2023, and staff is requesting the property be rezoned to C2 General Commercial, which matches the adjacent properties to the south and west. This approximately 3.5-acre property includes the former MoDOT commuter lot as well as Peculiar Drive. Peculiar Drive, as it is currently accessed at 58 Highway, will be rerouted to the traffic signal at what is currently Powell Parkway. This will provide additional opportunities for future commercial development on this property. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on January 2nd, at which no one spoke in favor or in opposition to the request. The Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the rezoning, and staff believes that the requested rezoning meets the intent of the future land use map and the findings of fact in UDC Section 20-3 and recommends approval.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And if there aren't any questions or concerns, we would request a second reading this evening on this.
Motion for a second reading.
Motion for a second.
Second.
We have two motions and a second for a second reading.
Might also do a second.
What?
Might also do another second, so we have
We
two
have
and
two motions and 2 seconds. Any, you guys got me messed up now. Any discussion on the motion to approve the second reading? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 1, motion approving the second reading of Bill 2024-01.
An ordinance approving a rezoning to C2 General Commercial for property located at the southwest corner of East North Avenue, 58 Highway, and Interstate 49.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
McCallum,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Yes.
Kraft.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 2, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2024-02.
An ordinance amending Section 18-2 and Chapter 30 of the Unified Development Code related to the Old Town Belton Overlay District and Sign Code.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And you're up.
Yep, before this evening are UDC text amendments for the Old Town Overlay and the Sign Code. The amendments include a repeal and replace of Section 18-2 for the Old Town Belton Overlay District, which was first adopted in 2011, with only minor updates since. Staff is proposing to modify the site design standards, including lot sizes and setbacks, to better accommodate new development that matches the historic building pattern of the district. This includes 0-foot setbacks on all lots with Main Street frontages. These amendments also include establishing reduced parking minimums in the overlay district at 50% of the minimum citywide, and allowing adjacent on-street parking to be counted towards that minimum. Placemaking standards are being added to encourage businesses to install pedestrian-oriented signage, including temporary sidewalk signs and outdoor dining on the public sidewalk, provided it does not interfere with minimum sidewalk widths. As part of the overlay update, previous sections related to sidewalks, landscaping and screening, and review procedures have been removed, as those requirements are found elsewhere in the UDC or the Code of Ordinances. The second set of amendments includes the repeal and replace of the sign code in Chapter 30. There are several sections of the code being modified, including clarifying common sign code issues and that have arisen over the past year, specifically related to permitting, as well as ongoing code enforcement items. This includes clarification on sign types and when permits are required, as well as clarifying landscaping requirements for monument signs. Staff is also proposing to add or adjust standards for several sign types, which would include allowing taller and larger monument signs for multi-tenant properties that have at least 400 feet of frontage along I-49. as well as allowing signs directing traffic to be for any commercial and industrial properties. Currently, it's restricted to just those uses with drive-through facilities. Removing that restriction allows signs to be better suited on the site that are located for directing traffic to their appropriate locations. As part of that, we would also be removing the restrictions that those only be monument signs and removing the restriction that they cannot have commercial message. So that would allow those directional signs to be 3-foot tall pole signs with commercial logos designating the business that they are utilized for. Additionally, we've had several issues the last couple of years related to firework tent permits. Therefore, we are proposing to remove the standalone fireworks tent sign requirement and include it with the already permitted temporary public event signs, which would allow firework tents to have up to 18 signs, 6 of which may be on the fireworks tent lot, with the remainder being off-premise on private property with the property owner's permission. Those types of signs are also exempt from permitting, but still are not permitted in the right-of-way. We would also establish a maximum height standard of 10 feet for inflatable signs and a maximum duration of time for 30 days for those types of permits. Currently, there are no standards for inflatable signs. We'd also recommend increasing the number of real estate signs allowed for multifamily developments from 1 sign to 3 signs per frontage. And then also allow murals in any non-residential zoning district. Currently, they are permitted only in the Old Town overlay. Last few items are specifically related to businesses. We would be removing the restriction on the time period between temporary signs for businesses, which currently, if you have a temporary sign, you're allowed it for 30 days, and then it has to come down for 60 days, and then you can apply for another 30-day permit. We're proposing to remove that restriction and allow businesses to have temporary signs for up to 120 days a year. And that is consistent with many other cities in the area. And then lastly, for grand opening signs, they're currently limited to 30 days. We are requesting to increase that to 60 days to better accommodate new businesses in the community. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 19th, at which no one spoke in favor or in opposition to the amendments. And the Commission recommended unanimous approval of the amendments. Staff believes that the requested text amendments meet the findings of fact in UDC Section 20-3 and also recommends approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I got 2, I think probably pretty simple firework signs. Is this going to, that change, will this increase the amount of signs that they have or that they could do from the current?
So currently, the code only requires or only allows 1 fireworks sign permit per tent, and it has to be on the property. In practice, that is not what any of the fireworks tents actually do. So the change in this code makes it easier to advertise for the sign permits. They're typically only up for 7 to 14 days a year, and we really haven't had any issues or concerns with those signs as long as they're not in the right-of-way.
So it's getting us more in line with practice, it sounds like?
Yes.
Okay.
In the past, there have been a number of the tent operators who have actually given us a list of where they are going to place those signs with the property owner's permission, and that has historically been approved for many years into the past.
And then, other question unrelated to fireworks is the Old Town Belton overlay. A lot of those changes, my understanding is, were requested from those businesses. Is that correct?
That we have had some questions from businesses who want to expand into the rear yard up to the alley. Currently, the setbacks don't allow for that. Setbacks are typically 10 to 20 feet. So this does allow the businesses, especially along Main Street, to fully utilize the back of their properties. It also helps with infill development, allowing the properties to build up to the historic setback at the back of the sidewalk.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the things you crossed out in red was a requirement for a landscape strip between the sidewalk and curb. Has that completely gone away?
We removed that. Any of the sidewalk standards or street standards would follow the Public Works Design and Construction Manual. On Main Street, it's not really desirable to have that 2-foot strip
Sure.
of green space. We want the sidewalk from the curb all the way to the building wall.
So if somebody developed along Commercial or Second in the Old Town Overlay District, would they need to have this, or would they be excused from the 2-foot for a resident?
They would follow the design and construction manual based on the street type for Commercial Street.
Which is a 2-foot?
I believe it's a collector street, so there typically is a green strip in between the curb and the sidewalk.
And a 5-foot sidewalk, right?
Yes, be a 5-foot sidewalk.
Right, okay. Well, it's a little weird, but, because I know further on this, we have a public art council approval, but on page 55, it says, there's references to average and reasonable persons deciding what can be in murals. Are we going to rely on the Public Arts Council to make recommendations, or are we just going to go down the street and ask reasonable people, or if somebody writes a letter to the editor, are we going to then cross it out or make them take it down? How is that going to work?
So,
For the attorney.
So that standard directly stems from the United States Supreme Court's decision on what is considered obscene, which can then be regulated or prohibited under the First Amendment. That exact reasonable standard given the contemporary people in the area. So no, we won't be going knocking on doors asking for people. It'll be up to the Planning Commission and the Arts Council to use the judgment that they believe a reasonable person within the community would determine what is obscene and not obscene.
Okay, so it is one of our groups. It's not me,
Yeah.
because I was going to volunteer to be that reasonable person.
Yeah. Yes, there will not be like ongoing polling, and also Matt can apply that standard as well. But what that is from, that just stems purely from, it's Potter Stewart in the same case where he said he didn't know what pornography was, but he knew it when he saw it.
Right.
That's the same standard that came from that case.
Okay.
And for clarification, murals only require a sign permit, which is an administrative approval. So that will not go to Planning Commission or the Public Art Commission. At least that's not how it's structured currently. Now, if we have any concerns about a mural, it is something that we could recommend to take to the Planning Commission just for feedback and discussion before we issue a permit.
Okay. And then the third thing, when I was campaigning 3 years ago, I put up this 4x8 sign hanging from my porch. Some people said, well, you can't do that, but then there was really no code about that. And I tried to read here and see how that would have influenced that sign. And I see the political signs are exempted from a lot of stuff, but still there's things in there about hanging it against a wall, but there's nothing about hanging it from your house. Is there in other words, would that still be possible?
All we have for political signs is they just can't be larger than 6 square feet. So a 4x8-foot sign would not be allowed in a residential zoning district,
Okay, regardless of where it is,
regardless of its location.
even if you had a 4x8 window, you could put it inside.
You can put it
Inside, we don't mess with signs on the inside of the window. But if it's outside, it's limited to the 6 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
I hung mine on the back of my truck.
Okay, well, if you park in a residential district, it's got to be
Parked at the church.
Ooh, okay.
All right. Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. 3, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2024-03.
An ordinance authorizing the filing of an application with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources State Revolving Fund Program for waterline replacements loans under the Missouri Safe Drinking Water Law.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. You're up.
So this is a little confusing what's going on, so I just want to kind of back up in history so everybody knows. If you remember back in April 2022, we had the citizens vote whether to extend the capital improvement sales tax so we could use those dollars to work on water lines. The initial idea when we did it was to use bonds, and it made a lot of sense in 2022 because interest rates were relatively low. And if you ask somebody then, their interest rate's going to go up and up and up to where bonds are 8 and 9%, you'd have thought no. Well, since that time, bonds have gone up, but we can still access money doing the same sort of thing, but using SRF, which is a state revolving fund that's administered by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. And so basically that process is you have to fill out a loan application, you have to go through the same sort of thing. It's the same thing we did for Olson Acres doing the sewer line. We have to go through the entire process. We have to design the job. They have to go through all this rigmarole, and then you bid the construction. Then at that point, they give you the money, and you move forward. And so in order to do it, the first step you have to take is that you have to authorize somebody to sign the documents for the city. So even before we can get involved in filling out an application and starting the process with them, they make me have to come to you and have you establish who is the person that's going to sign all the documents. And so the normal person that Missouri DNR they want to have is the mayor. So this ordinance before you tonight just authorizes the mayor to be able to sign documents when we get to the point of going through the process. The process actually takes almost 2 years, and so this is the first bit of going through that process. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
The only question I got, will this run afoul with what we asked the voters to do?
No, this would not.
By bonding instead of?
No, because it's still a similar program, and we're still, at the end of the day, utilizing the tax that they approved to be extended for the purpose that the ballot language limited it to.
Even though we're saving money, I just want to make sure. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
In your description there's a sentence I don't understand. The construction contract would be for 2 years, so the repayment of the loan will be after the current debt is paid off. What current debt are we referring to?
So just to get it clear, is that there's a current debt that the capital improvement sales tax is paying for. I believe it is High Blue, the police station, the fire station. It was before my time, but I believe those are the 3 things it's paying for.
Yes.
And so when that debt is paid off, then that money will go to paying for water lines.
Okay.
So this process is going to take about 2 years. When this actually kicks in, we go into construction, and then when the project's finished, then we have to start repaying for it. So the time we will be paying for these loans, after we go through this long process, the other debt, the old debt will be gone so that the capital improvement sales tax can then pay for this.
Directly, okay. Thank you.
And that's what we told the voters when we passed it. That
Exactly.
we were going to pay that off, and then you start using that money to pay for the new money.
Okay.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4, motion approving resolution 2024-01.
A resolution approving task agreement number 44 with Wilson and Company, Inc., engineers and architects for Markey Road Extension final design in the amount of $295,500.
Present.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. You're still up.
Yes, I am. So the way that Mark works for acquiring money for doing projects is it's a long and difficult process. But every year, at the end of the year, certain cities do not finish their jobs, and the money gets returned back to Mark. And so what I try to do is have projects that are designed, ready to go, so I can achieve and get more money, and we can keep building without having to naturally win anything in all their great debates and who's going to get money. And so right now, Mark is going through the process, and today we actually had a meeting, about a 2-hour meeting, discussing this same issue. And we try to get Markey Road Extension, that's basically going from where Hobby Lobby is and going to North Scott. We tried to get that money in a grant application last year, and we were unsuccessful in getting it. However, because of cities returning money, there's monies that are available. And so we're trying to we've done the preliminary design ourselves, and we're going to need some more help to get it done on their timeline. So we're trying to get it done on the timeline, and it looks like, I hope, if everything works right, next month we'll have the money approved, And that way, just like we're doing North Scott this year, we will be able to finish it, get it obligated, and be able to build that job next year. And so in order to keep jobs on the shelf, because other cities are not doing it, they're not getting jobs ready. So when money becomes available, they sit there and they go, they asked every city today if they can advance a job, if they had a job, and no one said yes except for us. So it is just taking money from them that's available all the time. And so I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve so we can keep building more jobs.
This is what we do in North Scott too, that extra money, correct?
Right, I got extra money there and I got extra money in 58. So I keep going after more and more money for us.
Go ahead.
No. Very good.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to ask the question. I want to preface by saying, look, I support this and what you're doing sounds awesome, so keep up the great work. But my question is this going to, will this also connect Markey over 7149 to the outer road on the other side? Across the highway?
No, Markey's not, you mean like the old 162nd Street connection that used to be there? No, it will not make that connection.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I would be remiss, especially as Ward 1, to not point out that that has been something that has been asked, not this specifically, but just in general. I've heard, hey, if we could get more connections across the highway. So just something to, if you could keep in the back of your mind going forward is what I would ask, is what citizens have asked me, and just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
Is it going to be north or south of the church? Do you know yet where the preferred route would be?
North.
Methodist Church? Well,
Church that, the current church that's right behind
Yes.
the store, it's going to follow the same path right where it ends right now. It's going to continue on from right there. We're going to have to move it slightly to the south to make it work.
well, it goes up the hill past Hobby Lobby,
Correct.
and then there's a stoplight, and right?
And it continues
Stoplight,
past
no,
that.
just dead ends. You have to make a turn to go in front of Quick Trip.
Oh, all the way over there.
Yeah, so dead ends and then goes into Quick Trip, and then this is gonna go around to North Scott.
Okay.
And end
Kinda
up by
like
Zed's.
Kind of like behind the
So basically, it'll be north of the church, I think.
Yes, it'll be
Yes.
north of the church.
North of the
and
church.
then Through Quick Trip.
Okay.
Yeah, this won't displace anybody
No.
or anything. It's,
No, oh, no, I understand.
No, this is all an open field.
Well, it will displace some homeless people on it.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 5, motion approving resolution R 2024-02.
A resolution approving supplemental agreement number 4 with HDR Engineering, Inc. to perform construction inspection services for the Route 58 and Powell Road project in the amount of $362,026.66.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. You're up again.
So for all, especially federally funded jobs, it's required to have a specific level of inspection along with it. Normally MoDOT requires that the person who designed it actually comes out and inspects it. So the designer of the project was HDR Engineers. We asked them for a price to do the construction inspection. We negotiated a price of $362,000 to do that, and we're coming to you for approval so they'll inspect that project for us.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 6, motion approving resolution 2024-03.
A resolution supporting the City of Raymore in opposition to any proposed future solid waste or demolition material landfill or any solid waste or demolition material transfer station being located in Kansas City, Missouri, adjacent to the northern border of Cass County, Missouri, and in support of Senate Bill 739, Senate Bill 769, and House Bill 1751.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. You're up, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor and the rest of the council, I'm pleased to bring this resolution back in front of you. You might recall we passed a similar resolution this past year it was asked of us to support Raymore's efforts in rebuffing the proposed landfill. I know there were 3 bills, and they were just mentioned, Senate Bill 739, Senate Bill 769, and House Bill 1751 that were pre-filed in the state legislature, and we'll probably have some action at some point. And so Raymore went ahead and redid their support of those bills formally, and has asked us and other area governmental entities to renew our support in the fight to keep this landfill from going in pretty much in our own backyard, in Raymore's backyard and Belton's backyard. So we're asking for you guys to renew the support of this action through this new resolution. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Well, one is just trivial. In the second Corky dot under background, it says Highway 50. It should be 150, I think.
Yes.
I'm a little confused because at first it was, and maybe some of these bills in the Senate and the House are addressing this, but it was that they wanted the limit or the distance that had to be from a city property to be asked was a half mile, and they wanted to increase it to a mile. But this doesn't say anything about this. This just basically says we're against this landfill wherever it is. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the opposition to the landfill is where essentially it's been proposed, and the legislation that's been proposed again this year, as it was last year, the mechanism they're using is to increase that buffer from a half mile to a mile. So the legislation this year will be similar to the legislation that was proposed last year and that we supported. So it is essentially the same thing.
Okay, because, and I'm all for it, but, I mean, they could conceivably move it even closer, or actually on the north side of 150 to make that mile improvement, and this still would say we're against it because it's in the neighborhood of Raymore and us. So.
Well, we might still be against it at that point, but I think that the mile buffer is there's a reason for that, and so that's essentially what the legislation is saying.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so we're all on the same page. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda, one motion non-debatable to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have one question on item number 11, so I think that means I need to pull it from the consent
yes.
agenda. So I motion, do I have to make a motion for that? I motion to pull item 11?
We'll just pull 11. Anybody else?
I again just have a question regarding the time on number 4. So.
All right. Anybody else? Hearing none. Other than what I've heard, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, motion approving resolution 2024-05.
A resolution authorizing and directing the custodian of records of the city of Belton, Missouri to destroy certain records that have exceeded the retention requirements as set forth by the state of Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Which one is this? This you? Go ahead.
What is the retention requirement?
It depends on the type of document it is, but on the spreadsheet, and it is based upon the Secretary of State's retention schedules.
Okay.
We follow the state requirement.
Okay.
On the spreadsheet, you'll see series numbers, GS010, something like that, and that goes back to the state retention schedules.
Okay.
Good? All right. Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, motion approving resolution 2024-12.
A resolution approving task agreement number 43 with Wilson and Company, Inc., engineers and architects, to prepare the City of Belton RAISE grant application for planning and preliminary design in the amount of $34,996.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I'm going to guess that this is probably you being proactive based on everything you just said. But do we know what this is? I mean, I saw it's for a RAISE grant, some kind of infrastructure grant application, but do we know what that 2026 grant is for specifically?
So every year for the last 15 years, there's been a federal grant process. It used to be called Tiger, now it's called RAISE. Every different president changes the name of it. And it gives an opportunity for you to do one of two things. You can apply for a planning grant, or you can apply for a construction grant. These construction grants go up to $25 million. It has to be a project that has national significance, you're going to do something to really improve transportation, something that's going to help the country. So the first step for a lot of the grants is to do a plan and have the plan accepted by Mark and by MoDOT and by whoever the players are. And so we don't have an actual plan yet. And so one of the things that we need to do is write an application, and it's going to cost us about $34,000, $35,000 just to do the grant application because they're so complicated, and they only give you a 2-month window to do it. They're due February 28th. And so it's a heavy lift to get it done. And we're going to apply for a planning grant. That planning grant is going to look at the ability for us to use the assets that we have, such as the railroad, such as land and development, roadways. What do we need to do to increase development and do the things we need to do to really advance the city? And so that's what we're looking at doing, achieving that planning grant, and then from that, then making an application, actually it'd be multiple applications over a series of years to do construction. And that way we could do a lot of wonderful things here.
So this is an application, if I'm understanding correctly. This is an application in order for us to be able to increase our infrastructure in some way. We haven't yet identified the way specifically, but it's to make sure we're ready to get that grant money.
Correct. So this is an application to get planning grant, and then we're going to do a plan, and the plan will be with us and our partners like the railroad and other people, so we can actually do more things here in town.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. H, communication from City Council.
Oh, I'm up.
You're up.
Okay, I have a small thing, I think. On the city website, under new resident information, in the trash/yard waste section, it still states WCA is providing our service. Obviously, we just need to get that updated. Just thought it was brought to my attention, so just wanted to point that out. And obviously, we could update that by potentially just eliminating that verbiage in there, so then we don't have to worry about updating it in the future. Just a thought. So, and then I just want to talk about, we had a lot of weather recently, so I want to point out, so like, I want to just have a little bit of a story here. So very early this morning, I saw my neighbor who works for the Belton Regional Hospital start her a walk to the hospital and make sure she got to work today. And I know there's a lot of people today that went to work and needed to work despite the 10 inches plus of snow that we've got in areas. And so I just want to express appreciation for those people. I know we talk about fire and we talk about police and what they're doing, and public works especially. But I just want to recognize there's other people like those who worked at the hospital that made that worked today and made sure that we continued to have great services that we have. I know Greg said he's very tired. I know Public Works has been very busy today, and I just want to express I have only heard good things about all the work so far. So just wanted to pass that on, and please pass that on to everybody that's been working hard nonstop. I know. And like I mentioned, the police and fire, I'm sure that they were working today without a question. And so I think this is, that would be a good segue for me to mention that today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. You may have saw that out on Facebook. If you haven't, I just want to bring attention to it. So if you know anybody in the law enforcement, make sure you tell them you appreciate them today. So that is everything that I have.
All I was going to do was thank police, fire, and public works for a great job today with the snow. We had a lot of snow. Thank you.
Couple parks items. Architects are hoping to wrap up the plans for the Dryden land by the end of the month. They've gotten some staff feedback on the initial plans and are doing revisions. Also, there's a family dance on February 10th at Memorial Station. Sign-ups and details will be on the Public Works Facebook page and website soon. And yes, thank you to everyone who's worked really hard through the snow. I love it. I'm glad it snowed. Sorry.
Really?
Yes.
You're to blame. Councilman Prine.
I do not share her enthusiasm for the snow, but am equally grateful for our street department doing their best to keep up with one of our biggest snowfalls in recent history. So thank you, guys.
Councilwoman Kraft.
Okay, well, we had our second homelessness committee meeting. It went very well. We really focused on getting some warming centers for our homeless. We are working with Chief Lyons to get some churches involved and get some volunteers to help man some warming stations. That was pretty much our overview of the meeting, was to work on that. And then my other thing to mention is we do have the homeless count coming up. They are still looking for volunteers who would like to go out in the evening, middle of the night, to help find them and get them counted.
When is that?
That is a great
18th?
question.
January
that
24th.
24th. I was wrong.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob.
Councilmember Powell.
Okay, two things. One is just to follow up on Councilmember McCallum's statement. We had a couple of questions from Traditions that they got the waste cans from the city almost immediately after moving in, but they never did get the recycling. And I've found out that you have to call GFL to get the recycling card. So maybe in addition to what you suggested as a change, maybe that addition could be in there for new residents. They have to, with the phone number, to call it GFL. And again, I support everything that the Public Works, the fire. I know that the fire was, department was there looking for down lines and everything today, and that takes away from being in a warm room, so I appreciate that. Also, I think the last time we met was in December. I mentioned that in response to the mayor's Christmas tree that Price Chopper had donated several $100s worth of food for that project. And I said that Hy-Vee was in the process, and Hy-Vee did come through and donated a $50 gift certificate towards the mayor's Christmas tree. So I didn't want to leave them out. So thank you.
Cool. Councilman Powell, or White.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know if other council members know, but we created yard signs that we can write in the ward, dates, times, so that way we can put these up to help if you're going to hold a town hall to try to get participants. There's 6 of these, and they will be in the city clerk's office. There's actually 5 right now until Mr. Powell brings back one. And so, I had Ward 4 last night, and all of the participants that came had heard about it through these signs. And so this was just one thing I came up with to try to get more individuals involved. So, and these are dry erase, so don't use anything else. they made it through the rain and they made it through the stuff. I picked these up yesterday afternoon and I was erasing them this afternoon. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up so that way you guys can use them if you want. If you don't want, that's up to you. We had a Ward 4 meeting last night. I was appreciative of the individuals that came. We had, including Rob, I, and the mayor, we had 10. So we talked about the use tax. We just kind of updated what we're doing within the city. And I did announce to the members that Mr. Powell would not be running again. And so there were a couple of individuals that are running. They introduced themselves. And so we will have a Ward 4 meeting shortly before the election where the candidates can talk to anybody that's there. So anyway, so that's it for the moment.
All right, I don't have, go ahead.
I was, on those signs, do those fit into our new signage classifications that we have?
Yes, they do.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
I just want to make sure before we start putting them up everywhere.
They do.
They're political.
All right, I don't have much, just want to make sure everybody had good holidays and then in 2023, and then hope that we kick off a good 2024 and get a lot of stuff done this year. And again, thanks for those that did have to work today, and thanks for those that didn't have to work today as well. So that's all I got.
I have two things, Mr. Mayor. One is we are in a 5-Tuesday month, and we are going to utilize that 5th Tuesday of the month for a council budget work session, and we will be discussing operations. So anybody who is interested in the operations of the city and where their money's spent, you might want to pay attention to that budget workshop. And the other thing is we had the filing deadline for city council come and pass, and the staff is preparing a City Council 101 course that we will be offering to those who are running for City Council to attend. It'll probably be we're still finalizing the actual dates and the agendas, but it will be in February. We do know that, so we'll get more information out to that shortly. But essentially the City Council 101 course will be just a basic overview of the services the city provides, and then our charter and our style of government and what that means, and kind of the legal roles for City Council and for staff and how that works.
Go ahead.
That sounds like it could be a good test run for some of the Citizens Academy content as well.
Yep, we are, and that's a longer term plan is to take that content and make it more robust and do a 5 or 6 week Citizens Academy that we could offer to residents or anybody interested.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Item K, items for review and discussion. Item 1, 58 Peculiar Street, naming and addressing. And let me interject here real quick. I don't know if you noticed that we did change the format on the agenda from
I did.
letters to numbers and numbers to letters. So, all right, just making sure, because it's a little weird talking the way I'm talking about it. So, all right.
And I like it. I like it.
You like it? Good. And Andrea likes it, and that's all that matters. So. All right, so item 1 is the map wasn't attached to the original agenda, and they sent out an email attaching it, but there is one on the dais for you guys to look at. So go ahead, whoever's doing this.
Yeah, everyone should have one at their seat. But with the future traffic and street improvements being made to several streets, both north and south of 58 Highway, west of I-49, there will be the need for street renaming and some readdressing to avoid confusion and mapping errors in the future. So map has been provided to you for review and discussion. The proposed changes that are on the map, we believe are the least intrusive to existing businesses and properties. The main changes include renaming Powell Parkway to Peculiar Drive for the portion south of 58 Highway, and then to Larkspur Circle north of 58 Highway. The reason for that is that there currently are no properties addressed off of Powell Parkway, so there wouldn't be any need for addressing changes. And there wouldn't be any need for any of the addressing changes on Larkspur, except for changing from Court to Circle for those few addresses that do have that. Additionally, all the other addresses are addresses already off of North Avenue. And then Peculiar Drive addresses actually start at the former Calvert site at 208 Peculiar Drive. The other major change is Cunningham Parkway, south of Lakeview Terrace Apartments, will become East 173rd Street. That is because 173rd Street is being realigned. So only the north-south portion of current Cunningham Parkway will remain Cunningham Parkway. The east-west portion will be renamed East 173rd Street. That does require 3 properties to be readdressed from Cunningham Parkway, including the VA clinic, the city water tower, and Beacon self-storage. The VA clinic is the only one that will have a full address change. It will require the street number to change as well from 209 to 1900. The reason for that is that the 209 is on the north-south addressing system instead of the east-west. If we leave it at 209, it will likely create some significant mapping issues, which will make it hard to find in the event of emergencies. And obviously, that's not a facility that we would want to have any addressing confusion for. Also, since we are already looking at Cunningham Parkway and Larkspur, there will be some readdressing for the suffixes for Larkspur again from, it's shown as Larkspur Circle on Google Maps, but there are also some properties that were addressed as Court instead. So all those that are addressed currently as Court, we will update to Circle. And then there still are several properties along Cunningham Parkway that retain the former Cunningham Industrial Parkway address, which was what it was originally titled in the 1980s. We are proposing to remove the word industrial from all of those street names and just simply have it as Cunningham Parkway. So we wanted to share this proposal with the council to determine if there are any concerns before we proceed with these changes. If we get the all clear, we will begin contacting the impacted properties and notifying them of these addressing changes, as well as notifying the county and emergency services.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, and it may not make a big thing, but I don't believe where it says 1737 is furniture deal. I don't believe that's where furniture deal is. I believe furniture deal is at the 18 further down, 1833, and that's where the hardware.
The furniture deals, that is just something where Google Maps has it listed. That's
So that's no big deal.
not accurate. That's just a label that is stuck on there.
Go ahead.
The very last thing you said is the thing I'm kind of most interested in, where you said we'll update, notify emergency services, the county, that kind of thing. What about, like, this is a serious question here, how do we update Google? Like because let's see, most people are going to rely on Google, right? So how do we make sure that gets updated?
So whenever we make an addressing change, we notify the county, we notify dispatch, we notify our internal GIS staff, and then Greg, I think you've had some experiences with how to get it to Google.
So with Google, it's not very hard. There's actually a method in Google Maps that allows you to make changes to addresses, to street names. And so basically what you do is you alert them of what the changes are. Then they have a team that actually goes back and contacts the county or contacts us to see if those are correct. And those updates get made to the map. Because believe it or not, just a simple resident can to make these changes to anybody's map. And so that's why they have a review time period. They review it and then they say yes or no to those changes.
Well, I'm not surprised by anything you just said. I learned something new, so thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Well, this isn't a subject of pride because it's my uncle, but not my dad, but it is disturbing that Powell Parkway is going away since other people are changing their addresses all over the place. Bill Powell was the mayor in the 1950s, 3-term mayor. He was on the first zoning committee. He was on the first planning commission in Belton. He basically grew up in Belton, although he was born in Grandview. And he did a lot for the community. And in 1998, they did that as an honorary thing to make it Powell Parkway because he was retiring from civic duty, even though his last mayor term was in the early 1960s. So you ask of any concerns, that's my concern. I mean, I support this. I mean, I know it's trivial and it sounds stupid to talk about a street sign, but because right now it doesn't go anyplace. You're right. It's just that intersection. But maybe there's something we could do to memorialize that or whatever, if you have a suggestion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I don't think it's stupid at all. I think that obviously that's named for a reason, and there's some
I
history here that
I
we
guess-
probably should try to save or find a way to re-acknowledge, and that's something we can keep.
My
we can look at.
question would be, is there any way to find out why it was named Larkspur? Probably not.
The only reason we would be changing from Powell to Larkspur, not the other way around, is because some of the existing addresses are affected. If we do it the other way
Yeah.
around, that they wouldn't be affected if we do it this way, right?
Or we would be taken away, so.
I think maybe we can get creative and see if we can find another way to re-honor the individual in question.
Thank you.
I mean, are you okay with that, or?
I agree with these guys.
All right.
Yeah.
I was legitimately gonna ask that question. I thought, well, if you're not bringing it up, then it must not have some significance. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad you brought that up. Seriously, I think that is important, so.
Well, I talked to his son. He's in Excelsior Springs, and in fact, his wife was the mayor of Excelsior Springs up until a couple of months ago. But anyway, I guess last August. But anyway, he said, "Well, can I have the signs when you take them down?" So
Do that. I mean, just out of curiosity, is there any way we could figure out what Larkspur is? I don't spend a lot of time on that, but just out of curiosity. You know, we're making changes
We can look into the history of that and see if
Okay.
there is any.
before we move forward with this. Let's double check that, please. All right. Anybody else? All right, I'd entertain a motion to enter an executive session, to discuss matters pertaining to the leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.2 and pertaining to negotiated contracts according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.12, and the record be closed and the meeting adjourned from there.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Lawson,
Aye.
Powell,
yes.
Richardson,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
McCallum,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
White, Mayor Largy.
Yes, motion passes.